Mia, a budding photographer drawn to forgotten beauty, convinced Ethan to visit the old farmhouse. She had always been fascinated by places that time seemed to forget, where nature and decay intertwined to create a hauntingly beautiful tapestry. Her camera was her tool to capture these hidden stories, and she believed the old farmhouse held many dark secrets. Ethan, a skeptic, indulged her curiosity. He was more practical, grounded in the present, and often found Mia's fascination with the past puzzling. Yet he couldn't deny the spark in her eyes when she talked about her next photographic adventure, even if it sent chills down his spine. He saw it as a chance to spend a weekend away from the city's clamor. The constant noise and rush of urban life had worn him down, and a quiet weekend in the countryside seemed like a perfect escape, even if it meant exploring an old, abandoned house. With a sinister reputation, their destination, a dilapidated farmhouse nestled at the end of a gravel path, swallowed by whispering cornfields. The house stood like a forgotten relic, its once proud structure now a canvas for nature's relentless reclaiming and eerie silence. It had stood vacant for decades, a brooding sentinel guarding forgotten secrets. Vines crept up its walls, and the windows, long devoid of glass, stared out like hollow eyes. And watching, waiting. Mia, armed with her camera, hoped to capture its melancholic charm. She wandered around, framing shots of the peeling paint, the rusted hinges, and the way the light filtered through the broken roof, casting ghostly shadows. Ethan, though apprehensive, looked forward to a peaceful retreat. He found a spot under a large oak tree where he could sit and read, letting the tranquility of the countryside wash over him, and unaware of the lurking dread. Little did they know, the silence held echoes of a haunting past, a darkness that whispered beneath the floorboards and seeped from the walls. The house seemed to breathe, its creaks and groans a language of its own, telling tales of those who had once lived there and never left. The farmhouse awaited their arrival, a predator in waiting, ready to reveal its horrors. As night fell, the shadows grew longer, and the true nature of the house began to unveil itself, promising a night neither of them would ever forget. A night of terror. The afternoon sun cast long, eerie shadows as they arrived. The light seemed to stretch and distort, creating an almost surreal landscape that made everything appear more sinister. The rural road, usually a symbol of tranquility, now felt like a path leading to the unknown. The air hung heavy, thick with the smell of damp earth and decay. The dense fog that enveloped the forest added to the sense of foreboding, making it difficult to see more than a few feet ahead. Every step they took seemed to echo in the stillness, amplifying their sense of isolation. A shiver ran down Mia's spine as they stepped onto the porch. The wood creaked under their weight, each sound magnified in the oppressive silence. Ethan, trying to appear brave, knocked on the weathered door, his knuckles rapping against the old wood with a hollow sound that seemed to linger in the air. Only silence answered. Mia felt a prickle of unease, her eyes darting around as if expecting something to emerge from the shadows. The house stood silent and still, its windows like dark, unblinking eyes watching their every move. The house seemed to watch them with unseen eyes. The door creaked open as if inviting them in. The sound was slow and deliberate, almost as if the house itself was deciding whether to let them enter. It was an invitation that felt more like a challenge. A musty, cold air wafted out, carrying the scent of damp wood and something else, something unnameable and unsettling. The interior was shrouded in darkness, with only faint outlines of furniture visible through the fog. The air was so cold it felt like it was seeping into their bones. Taking a deep breath, Mia and Ethan stepped inside, unaware they were crossing an invisible threshold into a realm of shadows and whispers. The door closed behind them with a soft thud, sealing them in. They had entered a place where the past lingered and the present felt like a distant memory. Every corner seemed to whisper secrets, and every shadow seemed to move with a life of its own. They were not just entering a house, they were stepping into a story that had been waiting for them, a story that would change them forever. Dust motes danced in the faint rays of sunlight that pierced the boarded-up windows. They floated lazily, suspended in the air, like tiny stars in a forgotten galaxy, illuminating the stillness of the room. Furniture, draped in white sheets, loomed like phantoms. Each piece stood as a silent sentinel, guarding the secrets of the past, their shapes distorted and ghostly in the dim light. The air felt heavy, charged with a strange energy. Ethan coughed, the sound unnaturally loud in the oppressive silence. The dust seemed to cling to his throat, making each breath a laborious task. Mia wandered into the living room, drawn by an ornate gilded mirror above the fireplace. The mirror's intricate frame, tarnished with age, seemed to whisper stories of those who had gazed into it before. As she peered into its depths, she thought she saw a fleeting movement reflected back at her. A shadow, perhaps, or a trick of the light. But it sent a shiver down her spine. A figure, tall and gaunt, standing in the hallway behind her. Its presence was unsettling, like a dark memory brought to life, lingering just out of reach. She spun around, heart pounding, empty hallway. Just shadows playing tricks. Or were they? The silence seemed to deepen, wrapping around her like a cold embrace as she strained to hear any sign of movement. Ethan, examining a bookshelf in the study, felt a sudden chill. The air grew frigid, raising gooseflesh on his arms. He could have sworn he heard a whisper. A faint sigh carried on the breeze. He turned, scanning the room. Nothing. Unease settled over him. He stepped away from the bookshelf, the feeling of dread intensifying. He found Mia in the living room, her face pale and drawn. "This house," she whispered, her voice trembling. "There's something not right about this house." Their attention was drawn to a large portrait above the fireplace. A woman, her face etched with a melancholic beauty, stared back at them. Her eyes seemed to follow their every move. Mia felt a strange connection to the woman, a sense of shared sadness. As they looked closer, they noticed something peculiar. The woman in the portrait seemed to be wearing the same necklace as Mia, a silver locket with an intricate design. A chill ran down Mia's spine. This was more than coincidence. This house was weaving its spell on them. The sun began to set, casting long, eerie shadows across the farmhouse. The temperature dropped, a palpable chill seeping into their bones. They both felt it now, a presence, unseen, unheard, but undeniably there. Watching, waiting. Ethan tried to rationalize the strange happenings, but his logic crumbled in the face of the overwhelming sense of dread. The silence was broken by a floorboard creaking upstairs. Then another and another, as if someone or something was pacing the hallway above them. Panic welled in Mia's chest. This was no longer just an adventure, it was a nightmare. She grabbed Ethan's hand. "We need to leave, now!" They turned to run, to escape the suffocating presence of the house, but the front door slammed shut with a deafening boom. They rattled the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. The windows, they discovered, were nailed shut. They were trapped. The farmhouse, no longer content with subtle whispers, was now holding them captive. The temperature plummeted, the air growing heavy and oppressive. The shadows seemed to writhe and twist, taking on menacing forms. The portrait above the fireplace seemed to mock them, the woman's eyes burning with an eerie light. The floorboards groaned above them, the pacing growing louder, more insistent. Something was coming for them. Their hearts pounded in their chests, each breath catching in their throats. Fear, raw and primal, took hold of them completely. With a surge of adrenaline, Ethan kicked at the front door. It splintered but held firm. He kicked again and again until finally the wood gave way. They stumbled out into the night, gasping for air. The cornfields rustled around them, the sound like whispers on the wind. They didn't stop running until they reached the main road, the farmhouse, a distant silhouette against the horizon. Even then, they didn't feel safe, not truly. They never returned to the farmhouse, the memory of that night forever etched in their minds. Mia never developed the photos she took that day. The experience had changed them, shaken them to their core. They couldn't shake the feeling that a part of the farmhouse, a sliver of its darkness, had followed them home. A chill down the spine on a cold night, a fleeting movement in the corner of their eyes, echoes of the hollow, forever haunting their waking moments. They thought they had left the horrors of the farmhouse behind them, but tonight the darkness returns with a vengeance. Pause. 1. As the clock strikes midnight, the air grows heavy, and an unnatural silence blankets the house. Mia feels the cold grip of dread tightening around her heart. Suddenly the lights flicker and go out. In the pitch-black darkness she hears it, a guttural whisper, a sound that seems to crawl under her skin. She reaches for her flashlight, her hands trembling, and points it toward the source of the noise. Pause. 2S. There in the corner of the room stands the entity, a shadowy figure with hollow eyes that seem to pierce through her very soul. Mia's breath catches in her throat. The entity moves closer, its presence suffocating. She knows she must confront it, or it will consume her. Steeling herself, she steps forward, her voice barely a whisper. "Why are you here? What do you want?" The entity's form shifts, becoming more defined, more menacing. Its voice echoes through the room, a chilling blend of anger and sorrow. "You took what was mine." Mia's mind races. She remembers the portrait, the eerie gaze that followed her. Realization dawns. This entity is bound to the farmhouse, and she has unwittingly brought a piece of it with her. Pause. 1S. Determined to end this nightmare, she gathers her courage and speaks with newfound resolve. "I will return it, just leave us in peace." The entity's eyes narrow and the room grows colder. It lunges at her, a whirlwind of darkness and despair. Mia stands her ground, holding up the portrait. The entity recoils, its form flickering violently. With a final desperate cry, it vanishes, leaving behind an echo of its torment. Pause. 2S. The lights return and the room feels lighter, almost normal. Mia collapses to the floor, exhausted but relieved. The entity is gone, but the memory of this confrontation will forever haunt her. The farmhouse's grip has loosened, but its shadow will always linger in the recesses of her mind. Pause. 3S. This is the end of their tale, a story of darkness, terror, and the unyielding strength of the human spirit. They may have escaped the farmhouse, but the echoes of that night will forever remind them of the horrors they faced and the courage they found within themselves. The farmhouse may have released its grip, but the darkness it harbored has left an indelible mark. Pause. 2S. Mia sits by the window, the first light of dawn casting long shadows across the room. Her eyes are distant, lost in the memories of the night before. The confrontation with the entity, the coldness of its presence, the terror that threatened to consume her. It all lingers like a haunting melody. Pause. 1S. She clutches the portrait, now wrapped in heavy cloth, a relic of a nightmare she can never forget. The farmhouse seemed to breathe with malevolence, its very walls whispering secrets she never wanted to know. And though the entity has vanished, Mia's heart remains heavy, burdened by the weight of what she has endured. Pause. 2S. Outside, the world continues as if nothing has changed, but for Mia, everything is different. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of the wind sends a shiver down her spine. She knows the farmhouse's shadow will always be with her, lurking in the corners of her mind, waiting for a moment of weakness. Pause. 1S. The future feels uncertain, shrouded in the same darkness that once filled the farmhouse. Mia wonders if she will ever truly escape its influence, if the entity's final cry was truly its end or just a pause in its torment. She fears that one day she may hear that guttural whisper again, feel the cold grip of dread tightening around her heart. Pause. 2S. But amidst the fear and uncertainty, there is a glimmer of hope. Mia has faced the darkness and emerged, scarred but stronger. The farmhouse may have taken a part of her, but it has also revealed a strength she never knew she possessed. Pause. 3S. She knows that whatever comes next, she will face it with the same resolve that saw her through the night. As the first rays of sunlight break through the clouds, Mia takes a deep breath, steeling herself for the days ahead. The horrors of the farmhouse are behind her, but the echoes of that night will forever remind her of the courage she found within herself. Pause. 3S. And though the future is uncertain, she knows she is not alone. The strength of the human spirit will guide her through the lingering shadows, one step at a time. This is the end of their tale, a story of darkness, terror, and the unyielding strength of the human spirit. Pause. 3S. They may have escaped the farmhouse, but the echoes of that night will forever remind them of the horrors they faced and the courage they found within themselves. If you enjoyed this tale, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of courage and resilience.